My name is Jamey Carrington, and at the age of 1, I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy type 2. In all of my 18 years on this planet, I've never walked, I have never fed myself, I've never bathed myself, and I don't know what it's like to feel the grass below my feet or jump on the trampoline. But I believe in my Savior, Jesus Christ, and this is my testimony. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about me, tell you guys about my personal life, how I came to Jesus, where I started, and yeah, so pretty much I was born normal, um, for the most part, as a little baby, as normal as a baby can be. And it wasn't until I was a few months old that my mom noticed I couldn't sit upright for a long time without falling over. I needed support. She noticed I never walked. I always army crawled. And so this was a concern for my parents. So they took me to the doctor, multiple doctors, to try to figure out what the issue was. And lo and behold, nobody knew. And for a while, my parents were really confused. And one doctor, they visited this one doctor, and this doctor gave them a list of possible diseases or symptoms that I could have. And the doctor was going through all the diseases, all the possible things that I could have. And he points to one disease called spinal muscular atrophy. And the doctor goes, "This is the worst one out of all of them. This is the worst one that your son could have." And my parents didn't know what this meant. My mom, who was a nurse, studied up on all the diseases. She studied up on the symptoms, what I could have, and most importantly, she studied spinal muscular atrophy because that was the worst possible outcome for our family. So, one day, my mom gets the news that I have spinal muscular atrophy type 2 after testing. And this was one of those things that can either break a family apart or it can bring a family closer together than ever. And I am so thankful that my family did not break apart. In fact, they got closer than ever, and they decided to stick through this together and support each other, my parents. So, I was raised with spinal muscular atrophy. I was raised in a household where we had a positive mindset about things. Now, of course, me being only a few years old at the time, I didn't really understand it. I didn't really understand why I had what I had. I didn't understand why other kids didn't have the same thing. I felt confused. And I felt left out a lot. I remember going to school and seeing all the kids do things that I could never do on the playground. And I would go home to my mom and I would be crying. And I would say, "Mom, why can't I do these things?" why would God give me this? Because my parents were religious and I grew up in a religious household. And so I asked him, I said, why does God do this to me? Why does he allow this? And my mom said that it was a gift. That's what I was raised to believe. It's a gift. Seems like a pretty crappy gift to me, right? But in time I would come to believe that. I believe that now. But it took a while for that to happen. For a large part of my life, I felt like I had no direction. I felt like I had no purpose. I felt like I was aimlessly wandering, trying to find purpose in anything I could. I felt like, in a way, my life almost didn't even matter. I mean, I couldn't experience all these amazing things. Everybody else was, so what's the point? I was left out in so many different occasions. I grew up in such a loving and supportive household, but it couldn't ease that burden. It couldn't ease that pain that I was feeling at such a young age. And so there came a time where I went to church every Sunday with my dad, and I even sang with my father at church because I grew up in the South in a Baptist church, and so in the South, a lot of people sing at church. A lot of people. You can sing pretty much anytime you want at church. And me and my dad sang pretty often. There's videos out there of me doing that. Those will never see the light of day, I promise you. But I remember like singing at church and thinking, well, this is stupid. I don't even like fully understand God or trust God or have faith in God. So why am I singing songs about how holy and great He is, you know? What's the point? And I think it was up until I was about 13, 14 years old. This was the time I was in middle school, and, you know, I was struggling to fit in, struggling to make friends. I was self-conscious. It was a time where it's already hard for a lot of guys, but it felt like it was even harder in my case. So I think that was probably the lowest point in my life. That middle school era, I would say. But I can't, and this was the turning point. This was the point where everything changed. I remember one day, if I'm right, I watched a YouTube video, and it was about the Bible. And I can't remember the exact video for sure, but a spark was lit inside of me. Something happened to where I suddenly found the Bible incredibly compelling. I found it so interesting that the Bible is a story about God and humankind trying to reconnect. I found it compelling that God had a divine council of other spiritual beings. I found it absolutely fascinating that Jesus was this person not even a person, God in the flesh, who fulfilled all these prophecies and has stood the test of time and has fulfilled the Hebrew scriptures, the Tanakh, the law, the prophets, and the writings. I found all these things amazing. The technicality of it, everything was amazing. And from then on, somehow I was reading theology books all the time. I was reading Michael Heiser. I was trying to step down as much Dr. Tim Mackey as I could. Even in class, I was reading theology books instead of doing my schoolwork. It's amazing. And I was filling my brain with all this head knowledge. I was digesting all of this church history and this ancient Near Eastern theology and all of this information about the Bible. I was trying to digest as much of it as I could. And then I realized what it's all about. I realized that it's about developing a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years. Since that point is developing my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I refused to believe the lies that Satan was feeding me. The lies that God didn't love me. That God was unfair. That I should just turn to other things to numb my pain. Like, I believed those for a while. And I realized that the more I believed those lies, that pain didn't go away. That pain stuck around, and it still ached, and it still hurt. And it was like, what am I doing? There's nothing I could possibly do to make this pain go away. Satan said, be mad at God because he gave you this. But then when I finally turned the ear towards God and listened to what he had to say, he said, I can give your pain purpose. Satan said, I can numb your pain, but God said, I can heal your pain. And not only that, but I can give your scars purpose. And I can give them meaning. And that's what's amazing about God. You notice when Jesus appears to the apostles for the first time after his resurrection. He goes to them and they're surprised, they're startled, they're having all these mixed emotions, they're scared, they're all these things. And Jesus says, look at my hands. Look at the wounds. Look at the scars. Believe it's me. It's me, I've raised from the dead. Notice how Jesus, in his new creation self, is showing the wounds and scars of his old creational self. That's what the power of God is. Because once we place our faith in God, we are new creations. And those scars and wounds that we once had, they are not only healed, but they are given purpose. God can turn anything around. If I didn't have God, I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably still be addicted to porn. I'd probably want to unalive myself. I'd probably want to crawl in a hole and lay there and listen to Radiohead for the rest of my life. I don't want to do that. Even though I like Radiohead, I don't want to do that. I don't want to wallow. I want to rejoice. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't know God, get to know Him, because He knows you. And He is the most amazing, most kind, most thoughtful, most loving entity you will ever encounter. Jesus Himself embodies that love. And that love, it can change your life. And so I hope my testimony, has helped you to see that. And I hope that if you're skeptical of Jesus and what He can do, just give it a chance. Give it a try. And I promise that you will encounter supernatural amazement. And you will see all the good that God can do. I love you. God bless.